to be on the All Goes Mainstream podcast. I'm trying not to close the browser while I'm readjusting, so it looks like I'm looking in your eyes. Thanks for having me. This is exciting year, week, month, day.
This must be a super exciting day for you, huh?
Yeah. Well, it is really exciting. You know, I've been thinking about that a lot. It's a lot of people have been in referencing to like my Coinbase investment, my seed stage Coinbase investment. Everyone's like, this is like a once in a lifetime seed investment, and I keep thinking, I hope not.
You don't want this to be your best, right? But
yeah. But in general, like it has. I've been having some time this week to think about. Like I'm really thankful for the Coinbase investment because it ended up being a defining investment for me over the course of my whole career. So not because of today, but because I ended up investing in crypto companies, and we at Boost VC have supported 130 crypto-related startups at this point. So we're like, yeah, pretty amped.
Well, I think one of the interesting things about that is like in venture, there's always some element of luck. Now, you have to be well placed for that luck in terms of being in the right place at the right time, like you were having the right insights to figuring out whether or not this is the right investment to make. And at the time, it was very, very non-obvious that Coinbase was going to be the right investment. But I mean, when you think about like getting lucky earlier in your career, what has that done in terms of shaping the way you think about investing into crypto in general and what that's kind of brought in terms of the cascading effects?
Yeah, I think early in my career, I didn't. You get to look at this game that everyone plays with fresh eyes, right? And like I just sort of I only invested in about. I invested in about 20 companies as an angel investor before I founded Boost VC. And I just picked people who I thought had very unique perspectives and who were great to be around. And that ended up working. And so it was one of those things where I sort of made an assumption that the hard technology could be built, where a lot of other people might have made the assumption that you need a market to make that work. And it was very counterintuitive to go into crypto, but I didn't, at the time, I think a lot of it, I didn't know any better in a lot of ways, where it was sort of early. I was 26. I was very fortunate to be in a position where I could invest a little bit of money. And at the end of the day, though, Coinbase, I was lucky. Like, I got lucky when I was 26, and then the luck continued, though, where I built conviction around cryptocurrency in general. And then I haven't introduced myself. Should I introduce myself?
We were gonna get there. Yes. So I think that's a great segue into like, so yes, you made this great seed investment amongst others, but you then after that created Boost. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your background. About how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, my name's Adam Draper. My entire career up to this point, I started a company called Expert Financial about 13, 14 years ago. And then after 4.5 years, we ran out of money. But I took those learnings and I started to coach entrepreneurs. And the ones that I really, really liked, I invested a little bit of money in. And I realized I wanted to make that a more professionalized system where I could professionalize is the wrong word, like a better system where I got to do it in groups. And investing in groups was called an accelerator. And so in 2012, 3 weeks after I made my Coinbase seed investment, I founded Boost VC with my partner Brayton Williams. And we since then are the accelerator for sci-fi. So we invest in there's this new breed of sci-fi founder who is building revolutionary technology and defining new markets. And they happen to be in these people happen to be in cryptocurrency, It happened to be in virtual reality and in space and nuclear fission and neuro things. So we like to invest in things where people sort of neglected markets, I should say.
Okay, so when you made your Coinbase investment, did you know that you were starting Boost, and did you know that Boost was going to be focused on investing into the crypto space?
Quick, no. I found it because my first 20 investments ended up being wide range. The only one Bitcoin investment, so it was Coinbase, and I actually didn't own Bitcoin yet. We can get into that sort of story later. I invested in another company shortly after that called Benchling that actually my partner and I went to just as a hangout, and they just announced a fundraise at a $4 billion valuation. So that's another great, it was a good year. It was a good vintage starting to invest in like 2011, 2012. And so I was figuring it out. It was sort of a little bit of a figuring out. I hadn't really done, it was convertible notes then, not safes. Safes have sort of taken over. And I was just thinking, hey, I want to do this with groups of people. Brayton Williams, my co-founder, also was on board for doing, working hard with me. And so we recruited a session and we put together an accelerator class of 7 companies. I wanted to do 15, and every person I talked to was like, 15's a lot. You don't want to do 15. And I was like, okay, we'll do 7. And so we ended
you had
up
very
with 7.
good reason, though. I mean, but you had very good reason, right? Like, you want more at bats. So in theory, more companies in an accelerator makes more sense.
And what they knew that I didn't know, even if they hadn't run an accelerator, was you don't know what you have if you're doing it, if you're trying to spread it too much. Like if you're trying to do too many companies at once, you don't have the time. You don't have with 20 companies, it's very difficult to spend enough time with each person. And Boost VC evolved. Like we evolved in here. I'm going to take a quick break and just play the guitar for a second. I'm really bad at the guitar, but during my LP meetings, so this is for FYI for everyone out there, if there are people, I play the guitar at the beginning of every LP update. So everyone's heard me play. I haven't played this morning, and I haven't played in about 2 months, but can you guys hear it?
Oh, yes, we can hear this, for sure. Are there any lyrics?
Coinbase is going public today. Coinbase. It was the first crypto success. So good, Brian Armstrong, Frederson. There.
This might have to become a new thing when companies ring the bell. I think they might have to also have their token guitar player helping them ring the bell with something as musically proficient as that.
I think ringing the bell is old. Like, I don't think we should be ringing the bell anymore. I don't think ringing the bell is over. It's done. But I'm not fully on board with the guitar playing yet. But I do enjoy surprising people with a little fun during any time I can be on. And it's very liberating to do something random in front of a bunch of people. And during pandemic, it's like very difficult to find like that random moment where a lot of people are like hanging.
I think what's so cool about this is now I think everybody's going to want to have a Zoom call with you because they're just going to want to get on a Zoom and hear you play guitar.
I'm in. I'll just. It would be amazing if that becomes practice and I actually get better. Because as of now, that strum of chords is the only strumming I know of chords, and I made it up when I was 14, and that's it. That's my whole. Actually, I did learn closing time and Backbeat, The Word Is on the Street, the Wonderwall.
Wonderwall,
so
yeah.
Those are my, yeah. So those are my things. Yeah, man.
You have a little a little guitar singing portfolio that's cropping up. Not quite as many not quite as many songs in your portfolio as you have as companies at Boost, but we're getting there. It's a process.
It is, and the actually. Here, I can I tell the Brian Armstrong like story thing? Like,
so that's exactly where I want to get to. So I want to there's a whole deep dive here on so many aspects of this story, from like, how did you meet Brian? I mean, you were emailing back and forth, which is out in the public. You'd invested in a number of startups at that point. So there's so much I want to get into here. So first of all, tell us, how did you first hear about Coinbase?
Yeah, so I did attend a Y Combinator demo day, and I didn't really watch the presentations though. What I did was I got the list, and I hadn't started Boost VC yet. I was trying to get involved in more startups, and I looked at I read every single one-liner. And I think this is an undervalued skill set of founders, is saying what you do very clearly in one line. And there were about 3 or 4 who stood out to me in that group of companies. What Coinbase's one-liner was, and I did talk to Brian on the day, but very briefly. And I was like, oh, what do you do? You know, like trying to match him to whatever this thing is. And it said, Coinbase, a digital currency marketplace. I didn't know what a digital currency was. I didn't know you could have enough of them that you could have a marketplace of them. And so,
did you even know what Bitcoin was?
No, and I didn't know what Bitcoin was yet, and so I had no idea what Bitcoin. But the thing he didn't do was put Bitcoin in that phrase, and I'm sure that was a very specific decision made by a group of people, like mentors and stuff, just to make it more awareness that, hey, it could be anything on this marketplace. There was only Bitcoin on it at that time. So I emailed him, and someone did the research. I emailed him that night. So I followed up, which, to my credit, like I followed up that night, and I said, hey, Brian, we met, at the Y Combinator demo day. I'm interested in what you're doing, and I've invested. I wanted to give myself credibility, and I had invested in about 3 other companies, so I listed all 3 of those companies, and so Coinbase was literally my 5th investment ever, so it was like it was early in my career, yeah. Do you want me to just okay, so let's just set the context here, right? Like, this was August 2012. I believe on August 15th, which was a few days before demo day, I think 5 days before demo day, the price of Bitcoin was $13.20, which was apparently at the time very close to the all-time high at that point in time. So yes. There was some things about Bitcoin starting to get in the news, right? So then Bitcoin had actually crashed by the time I talked to Brian the next week. So I talked to him.
How did you feel about that?
I didn't know what Bitcoin crashing meant. Like, it was one of those he was like, well, it was at like 15 earlier this week. It's at 10 today. I think to him that was a big deal. To me, it was sort of like, I don't know, like it was. I didn't know what Bitcoin was, so I was learning. But so what? Here, I set up a meeting with Brian, right? Mm-hmm. And we met at Red Rock. I always like to give credit to the places I go as sort of part of the decision context.
Okay, where's Red Rock?
It's in Mountain View. I went over to Mountain View. It's it was really close to where I was living at the time. I was in an apartment like 2 blocks away from Red Rock. It was my favorite coffee shop, but I didn't drink coffee at the time. I drink coffee now, obviously. And I went there and I got a hot chocolate with whipped cream, and I went down and sat with Brian and we met. He showed up, by the way. That was step 2. I followed up, but he showed up for that, which was great.
Well, he did in his email ask you, what can I do to help you make a decision to invest in Coinbase, right? Because out of YC, unlike today where every YC company imaginable has like people investing and closing rounds before rounds are done, or before demo day has happened, and they're all oversubscribed and everything, Coinbase was far from an oversubscribed round, correct?
Oh, yeah.
So he only raised like a few $100,000 at that point of $1 million round.
Also, in every YC group, it's probably important to look at the non-hot companies as much as the hot companies. Okay, like, and actually, just the non-hot companies. Like that group that's the interesting stuff that people go, no, I don't understand that, so I can't go for it, right? And like so it'll be like investing in Africa, investing in South America, like. Investing in crypto, it's like the things that you have to have a leap of trust for, and those things happen to be the biggest upside. Like that just is how it works. So we sat down, and like the two things that I always basically say when I reiterate our conversation is that he said at some point the world is going to be on one financial infrastructure, and to me that struck a chord, because I was thinking, why isn't it? Like that was my immediate response, was sort of like, yeah, that makes sense. Like why wouldn't I be able to be on one rail to be able to send money from me to anyone in the world? Because we can do that with the internet, right? Like we can send messages, but for money, for some reason, we have all these different paths, and it's expensive to pick those paths.
At the time, did you think of Bitcoin or any other crypto asset that would have been relevant to Coinbase's digital asset marketplace as being a money transfer element, or did you think of this as being like the digital version of gold or a store of value?
Okay, so it's an interesting topic you're bringing up. Well, by the way, he said, I believe that Bitcoin is the technology that will lead us there to this one financial infrastructure. And so we're the easiest way to buy Bitcoin. Like that's his pitch, you know? And so we talked a little bit. I had to learn what Bitcoin was. I had to wrap my head around that. So one of the things I remember from that conversation was he focused hard on two things: security of the platform. Like, hey, we're dealing with people's money. It's really secure. And I now realize why that was super important. Then I remember waving it off and being like, I figure you'll figure out the security. And then
was that because of his background focusing on fraud prevention and payments at Airbnb?
So that was the way that he would present it, right? Like, I focus on fraud payments at Airbnb, like it will be of the best security there is. I just made this huge assumption that he came off as a very credible developer. And I was like, you will figure out the security. You know, that's probably the most important part of this, right? Like that's probably the most important part of your entire thing. The other thing that he said was, we have a bank account, which I should have thought like, well, why is that important? And I think we did talk about it, because I remember him telling me, this is one of the first pattern in a long pattern of Brian Armstrong always focusing on the most important thing when building his business. The bank account, like a lot of exchanges actually got shut down due to bank accounts not allowing you to be able to host them there. So what he did was he actually spent money on a lawyer. He spent about, I think it was like 25-30% of the money in the bank account. It was like $30,000-$40,000 on this one letter to a lawyer, which is, you know, you never want money to be going to lawyers in the beginning of your startup. But he knew that it was a qualifier for Coinbase getting a bank account. And he knew how important that was going to be long-term for the business model, which was transactions. And so that was the first, by doing that, it created a moat. It was really, really difficult for any other business or any other crypto company where I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but SVB was the original bank account that he had. And everyone tried to go to SVB to get a crypto bank account. and they wouldn't really let anyone else in after that. So it became a form of a very specific regulatory moat of like uncertainty, but SVB was willing to experiment with one or two companies, right? And so, yeah.
At that point, when you heard Brian go through this logic and focus on that as the important thing, and we'll get to this later, but your version of seeing the ball of like what's really important, what has to be done now, did you have full conviction in Brian at that point?
So the main thing that he came off as was a very rational person. And it was a rational person who left Airbnb, which was known to be a rocket ship, which was a bigger company than the entire market size of Bitcoin at the time. So like a rational person doing something super irrational. And that's something that I have started to say is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for founders who are sort of misunderstood, but also they are very rational. They have a background of being able to do what they say they're going to do, and they're going after a market that's like, what? And that's what he was. Brian was a rational person doing an irrational thing. But then he also rationally, in that meeting, said, this is the first founder who ever said this to me. He said, this could be $1 trillion market. And no pitch I've ever been in has anyone ever said this could be $1 trillion market. Now, he undersold, it turns out. He undersold because the market's already $2 trillion, and now we're just getting started, right? Like we're 9 years in, just getting started. And so on the seeing the ball, what I look for is commitment. I look for energy, and then I look for this authenticity, which I believe fits this rational irrational thing. And he did have those things. He had those pieces. And he was really kind. He was just a really, really genuinely kind person. He was excited talking about Bitcoin. He was excited about he was excited to talk about the technology, and he was trying to let the one of the things I always want to highlight is Brian had the hardest job of most of crypto. I shouldn't say all of crypto, which was
why do you say that?
He educated the entire investor market on what Bitcoin was, and he got rejected by everyone. So it was basically like everyone welcomed him in to like chortle at him, basically thinking that this thing's not going to be a thing. And then, and so he educated everyone, all the investors who could have invested. And then and so everyone had their first meeting with what Bitcoin is. And so few people give Brian enough credit for the early days of actually having to educate this investor market, because he ended up representing this transition in crypto from the anarchist to the computer scientist, and then the computer scientist to the financial people. He has bridged those gaps of people.
How do you think Coinbase has built and grown itself in that same context, right? Because Coinbase is really the bridge between the crypto world and the traditional world in many senses, and it's become the on-ramp. You call it gateways, I think, but it's the business that has its feet in both worlds, because it has to have the trust of traditional investors to be able to use it, and it has to have some regulatory components, and it's a centralized business in a decentralized world.
They've done really well. I get to say that on their IPO, right? Like, I get to say that they did pretty well, especially because it's really the largest.
I guess on that point, though, Adam, on that point, though, do you think that Brian's early experiences having to not only sell his company, but sell the space has helped him shape the company in a way where he's not only had to build a company for the crypto world, but sell the vision to the traditional world?
There should be a word for like those people. I guess it'd be mission-driven founders or something. But like they're these people like Palmer Luckey, who did it with VR and the Oculus. They have to define a market, define the early users, and then they also need to educate the next rung of people and figure out what pressure points to hit in order to like grow the market. Because their problem at Coinbase wasn't no market; it was how big that market was, and so they were thinking, hey, this is money, so the market for money is huge. And whenever anyone from the outside in looked, though, they were thinking the market's Bitcoin and the market is small. And so it really becomes relative how you look at it. I think that they were always, whenever they focused on being the easiest way to buy Bitcoin, the easiest way to onboard to the crypto economy, the easiest way, they were always great. Like, I think that they did that very well. And then it attracted, the market itself attracted different types of people over the course of like when we originally got in, it was idealists and anarchists. Like it was and there was a transition where it was entrepreneurs and computer scientists starting to get in, but they needed to attract more than entrepreneurs and computer scientists. And so then it moved where it was like, oh, the financial markets are actually attracted to this. Let's build more products for that. And so, and I think that we're in that world right now, really.
So you've probably had multiple phases of aha moments, like crypto is really here. What was the first aha moment of like, okay, this is a thing and Coinbase is a thing and I need to be involved in Coinbase?
Okay, so first, I didn't even say why I invested in Coinbase. Like linearly, I should probably tell that story. Like, so I left. I didn't invest during that meeting. He said he had $300,000 committed. Maybe strong maybe. And he did. He was very overly honest. But I left and I was a little like, I was like, Bitcoin, like the first time you hear the word Bitcoin, you're like, what? And so I was like, what? And so I went, voice is like, I'm doing weird things with my voice today.
That could be good for your guitar playing, actually. You might get a lot of fans with your kids might appreciate that kind of music.
Like they do. They appreciate Moana and Frozen right now. I left and I was like, I need to learn more. So I emailed Brian and I said, is there anyone you can connect me to who's in this Bitcoin ecosystem? And he connected me to like 2 or 3 people. And every single person I met, to be fair, like they were all a little polarizing and they were all a little, but there was something driving them about this technology that it was more philosophical than it was technology. And every single person was so talented and dynamic. Like they were really excited and, they were like, if this works, it's going to be, it was that thing. And I was like, they're not even in this market and they're excited about the technology. Like they're building a search engine. They're building and like all these computer scientists were really, really excited. It was all developers who I talked to. And I was like, well, that's exciting. And then I sat on it for about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks. Like I wasn't really sure. I was back and forth. And then one day I was on the toilet.
Yeah. So yes, apparently Eric Newcomer's story, you literally did sit on it.
I did. So. I literally sat on it. And I was on the toilet. By the way, I always think investors always sound so confident when they're talking about their decision making and stuff, and like I don't feel I'm always that confident. I'm just confident in the founders when I'm excited about it, but the decision itself is sort of always a back and forth. And and I was sitting on the toilet and I was going to the bathroom and I was reading this Economist magazine that had been next to me for like a year and a half maybe. I'd read through it a lot, and on the I wasn't really pondering, but then I ran into this article and there was a coin on it and it said Bitcoin bubble bursts or something like that. And it was from 2011, so a year prior to me reading this. That was the Economist magazine I had. I was like, wow, a year ago they thought it was dead, but it's already back at 15. And this is saying that the high was 30. It's already back at 15. And someone wants this to exist. Someone wants this market to exist. And so I called Brian. I'm pretty sure I called him while I was still going to the bathroom. But that's a maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's a maybe. I don't think he cared about that part. He was excited about me saying I'm in. So I called him. I said I'm in, and I told him my whole thought process. He didn't want to hear about that. He just wanted to say like, here's the wiring information. And I was so excited. It was exciting. It was exciting. It was another deal for me, and I hadn't done that many deals, so I had got the conviction, I had built it up, and I had made the decision. And it was not a sexy fundraise. Like he ended up raising, at that time every YC company was getting 150K, and then I think he had another $100,000 committed ish, and then I put in a little money. And then over the next little bit, 3 months, 4 months, like he got maybe a trickle of a couple more checks, and he ended up he wanted to raise $1 million, and he raised 600,000, and that was it. That was and that was his sole seed round, which, I think founders think of fundraising as the goal now in some ways, and it's really not the goal. Like he just needed enough firepower to get going, and then I think Coinbase they were generating revenue when I invested, which is early. And it wasn't big amounts, small amounts. I think that the slide deck had a $16,000 in total volume this month or something like that on it, which is, they did $1 billion today probably in transactions. So it's a different world we're living in now. Yeah. So that's my story. Made the decision, went for it.
So at that point, when you were like, okay, I'm going to invest in this company, I'm super excited about it. I think you'd made like you said five or something like that, five, 6 investments before that. Did you think that this was going to be bigger than the other investments that you made, or a bigger startup than the ones you had made? Because you're like, oh wow, this space, if Brian is right, this space could be so massive? Or were you like, you know what, I'm just going to take a punt on this?
So not necessarily, but what I did notice with that investment was I spent a lot more time defending it than any of my other investments. So I spent a asymmetric amount of time compared to all the other investments I made, defending to my grandfather, defending to like every person I talked to, and I was like, I did this deal. Like, and then when I went into all in on Bitcoin, we were the first fund, Boost VC was the first fund to ever do that. Like, there was even more adversarial reaction to it. So like, I felt because I was defending, I took a stance and I built conviction enough to actually fight. Like, that was the thing I realized was and if I'm not even building anything in it, I'm just investing in it. Like, imagine how many other people are doing that. Imagine how many people are sticking to their guns saying, this is the way forward. And they're not even, they might own a piece of Bitcoin. They might own a small amount of Bitcoin, whatever. But like that, I'd never seen any community act that way, where they're not all a part of the same organization. But they're all a part of the same belief, and they're all fighting for the same thing. And I thought I think that would be where in the world of Bitcoin, that was what was interesting, was the asymmetric amount of time I was defending my own decision and saying, this is the way forward.
Well, that's one of the defining features of crypto that I think makes it different from traditional finance or other industries for that matter too, is the people who are so rabid about believing in crypto as a future. And there was some element of that back then. And was that something that you noticed and thought, oh, if people really care about this almost to the point of that it's like a religion to some extent, like, are they they're gonna do this instead of something else? And did that resonate with you?
I mean, it became religion, right? Like it always becomes it. You have to. I think it was interesting because it was unpopular. Like, it was an unpopular opinion to believe that banks weren't going to be the place where all the value is stored. It was an unpopular opinion to believe that you could control your own assets. It was like everything about it made you have to explain and be more rational about the explanation, where it's like, hey, I think the U.S. has actually managed a good banking system in general, right? Like, and there are a lot of people who will argue about 2008 or like whatever, but like in general, like it was the way to scale money up till now. And I'm just saying there could be another path forward. And like that, my one description there where it's like unlock the potential, that took 1,000 different conversations with tons of people of like fights. I remember there's an amazing, oh my gosh, Barry Silbert and I just realized that we were on the same panel a long time ago in Half Moon Bay. Barry Silbert, who runs DCG, and Mickey Malka, who's over at Ribbit. We were all on the same panel it was 2013, and it was in Half Moon Bay, and there were 10 people in the audience, 12 people in the audience. No one was in the audience, and they were mean. That's all I remember about that event. Was like no one was there to listen to what we had to say.
What were the questions?
Tell us we were wrong.
What were the questions?
I'll admit that like Barry and Mickey held their own really, really well, and I was sitting there thinking was like, wow, like these people are just like really, really upset about like their and Bitcoin.
Were they sent by the banks? Were they sent by the banks?
It was bankers. I mean, it was bankers. It was it was a capital markets event. It was called something capital markets. I just tried to email the person who ran the event just to get a flyer to frame, because I think it was a good representation of like the group of people who hated it, right? Like who would have not liked Bitcoin because their whole world was built on the banks working. Yeah, so that was a fun. Those events happen all the time, though. Those events happen all the time. And were like every event had one heckler. Even the ones that were pro Bitcoin had a couple economists who were saying we were wrong. Like, and it was economists at the beginning hated Bitcoin. They were like fixed monetary supply, like it's deflationary.
Well, I mean, and this is even
you can't have a deflationary currency.
I mean, this is even like not just 2012 that people were either skeptical or dissenters, but 2013, 14, 15, 16, even through the crypto winter 2018 or so, right? So, at what point, there always seems to be a time where an investor gets less worried about whether or not a business will make it. We even saw it in the Business Insider article with I think one of your friends, Tom Lavero from IVP, who even when they were about to make that investment, I think it was 2017, Ethereum crashed. And he had to make that decision of, oh, do I go ahead with this investment? And that was relatively recent. So, and you were obviously in Coinbase since 2012 and were very long crypto by that point. So at what point in time did you get less worried about whether or not you thought this business, and maybe let's elevate it as well, this industry would make it?
There's a fine line between stubborn and high conviction. And I'm not sure where I landed. And maybe it was just lucky, but I slowly followed this Fred trail from Brian onward to amazing human being after amazing human being who were all involved in cryptocurrency. You could have asked me in 2013 and 2014, and I would have said this is 100% going to be a thing. I will admit, the only time I've ever faulted, I ever stumbled in the market was 2014, 2015, and it was because it's not the people in those events who were like challenging it because it was their like livelihood and they just wanted to pick on us or something. I don't know. Like, we were the geeks at the party. Those weren't the people who bothered me. The people who bothered me were the people who trivialized the ecosystem, because they would have meetings with me and they say, oh, is that Bitcoin thing still a thing? And like having meeting after meeting after meeting where you're still trying to build up the ecosystem, where there was 6 month period where no one wanted to hear anything about it. And then Ethereum came and like it changed the game. After Ethereum launch, I was so heavy-handedly a Bitcoin maximalist at the beginning, but I didn't realize that really we needed just more people. Like we needed more people who are excited about the ecosystem. We need more people, and that's what Ethereum brought. It brought more people to the ecosystem to build great tools, to develop a better world forward. So I've always, I mean, I bet the farm early. Like I bet it wasn't Coinbase. I will freely admit that Coinbase was luck. Like that was just, I bet on a great person in a good market, and like in a small market at the time, but like unknown mystery market. But my conviction built, and I have invested in 110 crypto. Boost VC has invested in 110 crypto-related startups since then, and a lot of the greatest coming. Etherscan, we backed a lot of Coinbases in different markets. We were first check in Polychain. We've just helped develop this ecosystem, and like it would be very difficult. Like, you know, you sort of have to think of what your absolute truths are as an investor. And like, it would have been difficult at any time in my career to be like, I don't believe that Bitcoin will ever be a thing. Like I had to, and I think just like those people were heckling us, like in the market, like I'm that person, but for crypto, right? Like I'm that person who like their livelihood, their beliefs, their system was, this is where the smartest people are going to be building things. But
how soon after?
Like, yeah.
How soon after you invested in Coinbase did you buy your first Bitcoin?
I could probably look at the timestamp. It was probably. By the way, this is here. I'll tell another quick Brian story. Okay, so the deal closed, right? And he calls me. I'm in my car. He calls me and he goes, hey, like, oh, dude, so excited to have you involved. I mean, so everyone sounds super casual in my world. It's just, dude, super excited to have you involved. Some of the other investors, which I didn't know at the time were 2-3 other investors, they decided to buy an equal amount of Bitcoin so like invest in Coinbase, but also buy an equal amount through Coinbase. And I remember vividly the thing going through my head being like, dude, I just gave you all this money. I can't spend more money on you right now. And I had also just started Boost VC, so I had just invested like a lot of money into this new entity that I was starting the journey of. So I was thinking like, I can't do this right now. Which would have been Bitcoin at 12. And that would have been the best investment of my life right there.
Brian was giving you a gift that was even bigger than Coinbase.
And I did not take it. I took it 3 months later. So I ended up buying at about $30-$35 per Bitcoin.
Still okay.
And by the way, some of my coins did get lost on Mt. Gox. I ended up buying most of them through Coinbase, fortunately, and those ones did not get lost. But I was buying a futures contract on Bitcoin, and their miners like were hosting through Mt. Gox. And
it shows you what a trusted institution, the value that they have in an ecosystem, right? And that's one of the things that Coinbase has done so well. But no, I think you're hitting on a really interesting point, and it's something I think Chamath referenced recently because he passed on Coinbase but invested into Bitcoin. And it's kind of like you can't be on either side of this discussion. You almost have to be in one camp or the other. The right thing would have been to either do nothing or do both. And it sounds like you quickly realized that in order to be a believer in Coinbase, you had to also be a believer in Bitcoin or crypto, and vice versa. If you were going to believe in Bitcoin or crypto, you had to believe in Coinbase.
Yeah, when at Boost VC, our first session was not Bitcoin, so we didn't have any Bitcoin companies. But our second session was. We said we were going to back 7 Bitcoin-related startups in this next session, and what the real bet was on that decision was that Bitcoin was not going to grow as fast as the innovations built on Bitcoin, which I was wrong. Bitcoin grew faster. However, the people who are still around today from then are fully like, it would have been almost equivalent to have invested in Bitcoin and them. Most of the investments, not all of them. And like we didn't hit all the time. I never want people to think that venture capital is you hit everything. It's not. But when you hit, you just want to hit big.
You're a slugger. You're a slugger.
I found out what slugging percentage actually meant, and it's not. Venture capital is not actually about slugging percentage. It's actually about how far you can hit.
That's a really interesting way of framing it. I don't think I've ever heard of it that way, because you obviously, like, the way people have always described it in venture is that it's more about how many home runs you hit while at bat, right? So like Mickey Mantle hit a lot of home runs. He'd also have a high strikeout percentage, but it didn't matter because he was a slugger and he hit home runs. But I think you're actually making a really interesting distinction to all of that, which is in venture, like, it's one thing to hit 10 home runs, and yes, you'll do fine if you hit 10 home runs, $1 billion plus companies, for sure. But if you hit a ball that goes 700 feet, which I think would probably be impossible. I think most stadiums in baseball, I'm the worst at this because I was the most improved player in my Little League baseball league, and I was still the worst player. But
I remember Mark McGuire when he was on steroids and stuff. He hit one that was like 600 and something.
Yep. Well, but that's the equivalent, right? Like Coinbase is the 600-foot bomb, right? It's 100 billion, more than 100 billion today, I think, with where the prices are, or at least were before this episode. But like, that's a really interesting point. I mean, how do you think about that when it comes to
by the way,
how you think about investing?
Not to look at the price right now. But how I at the beginning, I've always just had an affinity for things that are unexplainable, and like, I think that it just became a superpower for me looking at investments. It's like helping people translate those very, very hard to define things to the mass consumers. And so I spent my first 4 years in investment. I would say I'm being paid back finally for the thousands of hours I spent articulating what Bitcoin was, like, to the masses, and helping the ecosystem. It was, I think I really love being a translator of hard things and I say it hard future, and we call it sci-fi, but it's like translating these concepts, these ideas to like the average person. I've always thought of myself as a pretty average person. Like it takes me a little while to understand things.
No. I would dispute that. And I mean this in the most respectful way. And I think I've told you this before, but I think your weirdness and your ability to think about things differently, because you have such different and interesting takes on things that most people just don't have. They don't see the world the way that you see it. That is what has made you see things that others haven't. As
always, the best sixth man. Michael, I appreciate that, the championing on. I think, you know what, I'm more receptive to the crazy than most people. Like, I think that's the thing, is like, someone actually built a jetpack. You see someone fly a jetpack, you invest in that person, right? Like that person has had to fail flying. Like that person has had to, like that sort of thing. I think it's just, a lot of people would look at that and think of the risk. I'm just thinking of all the things that person had to do to like fly. Like, no one else has done this before. How is that possible? So I think, I don't know. Investing is it's an interesting business, and I love it because I get to meet amazing people like you. Like, and me following my curiosities, I just find new things. Like, I find new stuff, and Bitcoin just happened to be all of the most interesting people all at once. And I got to be early. I got to be sort of a thought leader. I got to help banks. I got to help, I'm always super appreciative. Fidelity has been super early in the market. I've had a great relationship with Fidelity. I think I've gotten to meet just some of the most interesting and amazing people by taking a shot. And and either being stubborn on that shot or being high conviction, and I'm somewhere between those two.
So you mentioned something interesting, which is crypto's obviously, like, it started out as weird, but it's maturing now. It's now truly hit the mainstream with Coinbase going public, and it's now a public company that anybody can buy the stock of. And how do you then think about crypto from here? If you like to invest in the things that seem to be a little bit odd, a little bit different, does crypto still have that potential? And if so, where?
Yeah, it's really fun. So crypto is really fascinating. Yes, we still try to look at unseen pieces of the cryptocurrency market. Like right now, while everyone else is very, very excited about DeFi, even though we're amped on DeFi, we've made a couple of DeFi investments, we're amped on it. The main the thing that I see coming that a lot of people don't see coming, and people aren't really paying attention to, is decentralized web. So like when content is decentralized, when you can host a website online decentralized. We invest in a company called Unstoppable Domains, and then also Protocol Labs, and both of those things working in tandem give you a new internet. Like that type of thing, I think it's almost ERC-20 smart contracts drove a huge wave of people to participate in these ICOs and support ideas and then trade those ideas. The tokens were the ideas. NFTs brought a whole new generation of like artists and all this behavior. What I'm seeing is there's a whole new market segment in this decentralized web that's going to be attracted to the idea of sovereignty of your information and your identity. And like, I'd say not as many people are paying attention as they should.
Do you think that the trust that people are now placing in the crypto world because of bastions of trust like Coinbase being so public now, literally and figuratively, things like the NFT space where people who may not have invested into the crypto space at all or owned any crypto assets now are doing that because they understand it through the cultural aspect of NFTs? Do you think that will make it significantly easier for people to then transition to this in the identity space with things like domains.crypto, unstoppables.crypto domains, or what Protocol Labs are doing, things like that?
100%. So, there's always the major mission, and then there's what the product is. And I think, and in order to get to the mission, which is, let's say for Coinbase's sake, it's open financial infrastructure, right? Like that's their main mission. But their product for 5 years was buy Bitcoin easy, easiest way to buy Bitcoin. And I think the entire ecosystem has a similar like mission, which is get 9 billion people onto this system. But it's about where the demand and the technology unlocks are to be able to get new groups of people there. And so we're starting to hit a critical mass at different pieces, and we're almost at that like critical mass where you can do cool things where we trust crypto enough. When I got into crypto, I'm going to call them pirates. It was a bunch of pirates. They were working on their own. You would call it the Wild West, or I don't like the word anarchist, but that was sort of like a big group of like drug dealers, whatever. Like they were there, but computer scientists saw the value of what this thing was going to unlock, right? Like that was the thing that ended up unlocking a $1 trillion market, which is an unseen $1 trillion market.
Well, it seems like, I mean, in many respects, for the last few years, people have started to talk about commercialization being the big thing, right? In Internet 1.0, you had commercialization once you had the Netscape moment, right? People started to say, okay, I could think about going online and using AOL and communicating online and thinking about how to transact online. Very, very early stages of those things happening. Do you think that this is crypto's Netscape moment, and that commercialization will then follow because of all the trust, the people involved, the new capital coming in?
I mean, crypto works when we stop saying crypto, right? Like internet worked when we stopped saying the internet. I think it's I don't say Google on the internet, and I'm sure at some point people did. And
every business is an internet business now because it has to be.
Yeah. I'm a little disappointed if someone's not using the internet.
if we take that analogy forward, every business has to be an internet business or have a component of touching the internet in some way, shape, or form. Do you think eventually every business is going to be a crypto business?
Yeah. I mean, we still are just at the beginning stages of understanding what decentralized autonomous organizations are going to allow for. What, and that's a very crypto thing. I don't know who's watching, but there's all these technology bringing down the borders of the world to enhance innovation that's starting to happen. And people are able to, I mean, even just like remote contracting is an innovation, right? Like the ability to hire someone in the Ukraine and build a website is an innovation. Like these are things where they're in the Ukraine, but I'm building something that adds value to me today. Actually, I think my first website I built, but here, I'm only gonna, I'll say this only on your podcast, okay, Michael. When I started angel investing, and I'm changing topics really quickly, but when I was investing in those first 20 startups, I didn't know I was going to start Boost VC. I thought I was just going to be an angel investor sort of thing, kind of, and start building something else.
Hey, if you had done that, given your fifth investment, Coinbase, I think you could probably be a career angel investor.
It's true. So my goal was to be an anonymous superhero of an angel investor. Okay, and this shirt is the shirt that I designed. I think it was a Ukrainian designer who designed it, actually. And no, they were in Denver. The name of my investment thing was Ghost Angel, which is awesome, might I add. And all of my first investments,
you would have been the complete mockery of VC Brags, given Ghost 100%, Angel,
100%, Ghost Angel. And my goal was to be a notorious angel investor without anyone knowing my identity. Now, it doesn't work if you want deal flow. But my first 20 investments all got this shirt. And of those, it's like 4 are billion-dollar companies, and they all love this shirt. They still have it, most of them. So they like Coinbase, they still work out in this shirt. It's a good workout shirt, you know, like it's good. And that's why I'm wearing it today. It's like this was my angel investment shirt when I invested in Coinbase.
That is an incredible story. For so many reasons that you wanted to be the anonymous investor, that you hopefully would not ghost founders, but be the ghost angel.
Be the ghost angel.
Yes, that's too good. That's too good. So, I'm glad you shared that.
It's the first time I ever said that on anything.
I'm glad you shared that because the world should hear that story. That is a very, very good one. So,
but it is true for deal flow. You kind of need to be a person, and I'm sure there are people who have figured out how to be ghost angels.
You say that, but wasn't there a crypto-based venture fund that would fund projects through crypto tokens and would do it completely anonymously, and I think do it completely through voting with like people deciding how much. Yeah. Through
that would be the next. See, the first DAO was sort of a big blow up, and so everyone thought decentralized or autonomous organizations weren't going to work, because someone hacked it. Ethereum had to fork to a new system, but they work. They're great. We backed Aragon, which is one of the best providers of DAOs, and a lot of the best DAOs are built on it. But that was the idea, and now people are doing it. So there's PiDAO, there's Flamingo, there are like 10 of these DAOs that are community-driven investment vehicles. Yes. So actually, technically, Ghost Angel could be DAO.
You might want to save that. Get Ghost Angel on Unstoppable, and get that domain, and then
I'll call it Unstoppable Ghost Angel.
I love it. So before we wrap up, because you found Coinbase so early, and you saw things, you do see the ball, by the way, but you saw things before they were big. What in your mind is the next crypto?
I asked the Winklevoss twins this on my podcast, and they said it's crypto still. But here, this is what I'm going to say. My whole thesis is that there are two revolutions happening in the world. One is a digital world. One is a physical world. The digital world has crypto, internet, AI, internet, other virtual reality. And so people are doing this. And then on the other side, it's, neuro, space, oceans, all those things. What I will say is one of the things is reading the tea leaves a little bit on what the world is desiring and what they're thirsting for. And crypto was that, by the way. Bitcoin was that. Like Bitcoin, people were thirsting for financial innovation, and so fintech took off, but also cryptocurrency took off. Like, if you'd invested
after
in every
the
fintech
global
company,
financial crisis, and after the global financial crisis, right, and lack of trust in financial institutions.
And so I think the main thing that I'll say is I think the world's thirsting for true scientific breakthrough right now, and so it's. I think it's like last year. Last year's a perfect example. 2020, we had 26 rocket launches by SpaceX. NASA had not done one since 2011. There's just so many. The vaccine, we got a vaccine out in a year. Like, there's all these amazing things that should essentially be services provided by the government, but the government's not funding them. So I think the least sexy thing to be right now would be the government. And so my bet, and it's so counterintuitive that it makes a little sense, is that major innovation coming out of government bodies is going to be a big deal. And that's the probably like hot take. And so it's yeah.
Does that come from within and people who figure out how to champion innovation within these governmental organizations, or does that come from the outside helping governments figure this out?
I think Palmer Luckey identified this early with Underhill. I think he's going to be a huge leader in sort of like being a micro contractor to the U.S. government, and like that's going to be a really big deal. And then consumerizing that technology. That's the missing link. Is Boeing and Lockheed have completely destroyed this, just like the banks messed up the Fed. Like their incentives ended up being just sit there, be clunky, make no innovation. Like that, and I shouldn't bash those places, but that's what's happened. And so now, if we're in a world of like competing nations, like the U.S. I don't think is necessarily ahead. And so I think that the U.S. is going to be funneling tons of capital to this. I think I think it's a counterintuitive thing that sort of my 10-year bet is sort of like, I also think climate change is going to be a revolution of this thing. You have to figure out how to weaponize money at a higher level, and that's where the government comes in.
What's interesting is, so if we play this string out on this a little bit, with climate change, that feels like something that governments have to all collaborate on, because that's a world problem that transcends state, that transcends the nation state, right? And that we all either benefit or don't from collaboration on that. Crypto, on the other hand, may be a threat to governments and certain governments. So how do you think about both of those things? Because both of those things, to your point, are going to be a big thing going forward. And they are going to impact governments, but they may have the opposite directions that they're heading, no?
Hey, I think the government has a chance to show what they actually do in the next 5 to 10 years. I don't feel I've ever been particularly attached to like my local assembly people or my governor or my president. Like, I think that I'm so detached from like those decisions that it's just okay. And there was a world where that wasn't true. Like 50 years before I lived, like people were like proud and understood what their vote meant and like all that stuff. Like, I think, by the way, I think governments are going to start buying Bitcoin. So Peter Thiel said something about it weakening the U.S. dollar. weakening the U.S. dollar, like the internet weakened the U.S. dollar. Like I don't know. Like if you are the first to adopt something, you end up being the let things flourish, and you will be the place where all innovation happens. Stamp it out, you will not. And I think that that's sort of the battle that's going on right now. Centralized versus decentralized. Like they're worried about. But it's like, okay, if the government doesn't print money, what do they do? And so they're going to have to scramble and find what they actually do, because they don't print money anymore. I think it's a network that prints money. And I think that, and it's a network driven by communities. I think a lot of things. I think I'm just excited about the next 15 years. Like every time I meet a new founder, every time I meet a new, like I'm getting, you're interviewing me. Like I made a great decision when I was 26 years old, and some people didn't make a great decision when they were 26 years old, and I get the benefits of that when I'm 35. But that just means I get to keep doing what I love doing, like that. And at the end of the day, that's sort of what the great part of like this is. But I'm under no guise that I'm the reason that Coinbase succeeded. I'm under no guise that I got to be a small part of a great story. But the entrepreneurs are the champs, right? Like the founders are the people who are like really making the change occur, making the changes happen. I'm just thankful that I've been able to sort of be magnetized to a couple of really great people. It could be because I grew up in a family of venture capitalists. It could be because I like comic books. I don't know why, but I was programmed to sort of just like try to surround myself with really, really amazing people and then capitalize when I can on the craziest things. And I get to do that. And now people are going to give me credibility because I back Coinbase, but like, I just love it. I love it. I mean, you don't get more. People always comment on how young I look because, I have 3 kids and like I backed Coinbase 9 years ago. And like, I think it's just, I get to talk to people about the craziest stuff every day. And like, I get jazzed. And like, I'm just
what? So what's the day that you stop doing what you're doing, and why?
I mean, the beauty of venture capital, tennis, and golf is that you can play them forever, right? I'm pretty good at tennis. So I think
you were very good at tennis. Actually, you tried to play in Australia.
Yeah, I did. Well, I did play in Australia.
Yeah.
I played immensely.
Or you tried to play professionally?
Yeah, I tried to play professionally in Australia, and I like it. I think people who are competitive do pretty well in business, just because, and it's like the slow burn competitive, not the immediate gratification competitive. Like, yeah, you just want to keep doing the thing. It's one step in front of the other for 10 years, and then you might have it. It's literally 10 years to an overnight success. Like. Brian's been on this mission for 11 years, probably 10, 11 years. And I reward the hyper focus. I get to, as a venture investor, sort of teleport in and feel it and then teleport out and help. I try to help anyway. And I think that's the goal. The goal is to try to help as much as you can. Network, capital, enthusiasm. I'm just a battery charge. Like, I talk to someone, I'm just going to give them a battery charge. That's it. I go in when they are either depressed or excited to get them more excited. And like, I go in and like my team plugs me in. They go, oh, you should probably talk to them. And I go, woo! And all of a sudden they're like, it turns out a battery charge is all people need sometimes. It's great. I don't know what I've been talking about for the last hour. I just like communicating with you, man.
No, this has been awesome to be able to share your story with the world on Coinbase, your story about Ghost Angel, your thoughts on startup and the venture world. Because I think the other piece of this too is there's no one right way to do venture. There's no one right way to be an investor, but it's always helpful for people to hear the stories of why and how somebody backed somebody early on, because I think you can learn so much from that, right? I mean, and you just pick up key insights. Like when I read your post, Seeing the Ball, like you just start to think about, oh, how and why does Adam look at founders a certain way? And there's something to learn from that. There's something to learn from the way you thought about Coinbase at that time, and then even younger Adam learning from or older Adam learning from younger Adam of like, oh, here's what I saw in Coinbase. Now I'm 35. When I see the next entrepreneur, here's what I'm going to think about.
I do think about past Adam and future Adam a lot, like they are two different people. And today's one of those days I get to be like, thank you, past Adam.
No, past Adam was doing just fine. He figured things out
and
very well.
And also something to note for early angel investors: you shouldn't know what's a success for a while. Like, I think something that's happened in the last 5 years is angel investing has become very popular because you learn a lot. You learn a lot from doing it, and you don't need to invest a ton. You can invest a small amount of money. But like, the ones that you think are going to be the life changers aren't necessarily those ones, and the ones that have like a lot of momentum right when you make the investment aren't necessarily the ones that work. But the ones who sort of have a slow burn, they know how to control momentum, they know how to build momentum, those ones end up doing really, really well no matter what they're doing. And it's sort of like they're in it for the right reasons. Their soul is in it. Their identity's wrapped up in the business, basically. It's like, as a culture, what we say, one of the things when you meet someone new is you say, what do you do? And like, if your identity's split on who you are and what you do, like entrepreneurs, they should be all in. You need to be all in. And that's the seeing the ball concept, is just you're all in. Everything you're doing is really about making this concept better and building towards it. Yeah.
That's a great final word to end on, because I think this podcast was emblematic of a slow burn. There was so much great stuff at the end, just as there was at the beginning with the guitar playing, but it kind of lasted all the way through. So thanks for coming on such a special day for you. So congratulations, you've earned it. What you've done at Boost is incredible, not only for the business you've built, but for the crypto ecosystem, and now hopefully the Oceans ecosystem, the VR and AR space. So yeah, you deserve all the success that you've gotten, because you've worked really hard to build it.
I really appreciate that. I champions like you make it completely awesome. You're my battery, so I get the battery, and then I get to go like give it out to all these other people. And a really fun thing is I'm gonna go talk to my grandpa right after this, so I gotta go have lunch. So I'm pretty amped to have a lunch with my grandpa. And
have fun with that. That's gonna be a fun one, given today and everything that he did in his career. So Adam, it was great to have you on.
Awesome. Do I have to hang up? Do I leave?
No, neither of us hang up.
Okay. Sorry.
There we go.
Oh, it's uploading recording, 86%.
Yeah, don't hang up. That was awesome.
Was it good? You happy with it? It was good.
That was great. That was so much fun.
Good. Dude, you're fantastic. You listen.